it up.
What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Suit Hines Show. Today is 2021, and this guest, he's played with the Bears, Raiders, Redskins, and he's a Auburn legend, Auburn University legend. I have Jason Campbell on the show. How you doing today, Jason?
Hey man, can't complain. Doing pretty good. Just taking everything one day at a time as we continue to try to strike through whatever we call it this time, this COVID area. So so we're just trying to do the best we can, man.
Yeah, really excited for you to, join the show and everything. If people have seen my videos before, they know I'm a diehard Cincinnati Bengals fan. But, before I was a Bengals fan, I was actually a Redskins fan for a little bit. And, my first NFL jersey was actually yours. And my first NFL card was of yours, too. So it's really, really cool, to have you on the show and stuff. You were actually on my show last year. We, talked a whole different things, and about your time at Auburn, your time with the NFL and different things like that. And kind of going to be talking about Auburn this upcoming season and a little bit about the Washington football team. So this past towards the end of football season, there was big news around Auburn, and head coach Gus Malzahn was fired. What were your kind of initial thoughts when that firing happened?
Nothing kind of surprised me. When you're in the SEC, everything is always measured at high standards. Auburn has high standards, and they expect to compete each year in and out, year in and year out, to try to go to the SEC West and compete in the SEC championship game. That's your first goal, and then after that is to get to the playoffs. And and last year was tough. I was kind of shocked a little bit that they had let Gus go. After a COVID year, and with so much time still remaining on his contract. But still, at the same time, though, it didn't shock me because you can kind of hear the noise from a year before and everything. And so I think it kind of worked out for him still at the end of the day. And no coach wants to be fired. Every coach wants that opportunity to finish. But, in his case, he got off a few months and then getting a great job in Central Florida. And then, we end up getting a guy like Brian Harsin. We bring him in and, he kind of fits that old school Auburn way. That tough mentality where we're going to run the football, play great defense. And, during the Gus area, it's a fast-paced offense, what I call NASCAR offense, where everything's coming at you so fast. But I think you're going to see a different style offense with Coach Harsin this year. It's going to look more of the old school type of way of how Auburn used to play football and, play action pass and, getting after the quarterback and, and being strong and physical. So, we'll see how everything transpires and everything. But I think, so far, I'm hearing all the right things and seeing all the right things. So we'll see what transpires as he continues to move forward.
Yeah, I really liked that Brian, Harsin signing coming from Boise State. When there was like coaching searches and everything like that, was he the guy you were kind of hoping Auburn would get, or was there anybody in particular you were kind of wanting them to get as their next head coach?
Well, once once they let Gus go, it kind of opened the floodgates up because the one thing is, it happened a little later than normal. And, once Gus was fired, after the season and everything, I think Auburn, they did the right thing by taking their time and finding their next coach. They didn't just rush right into a decision and try to make a decision within a week or two. And so it goes to show you that they didn't really have anyone lined up at the time because I think they was really trying to see what was going to happen with Auburn towards the end of the year. And once they kind of feel like, okay, things wasn't up to what they wanted. And I think that's when they started to say, we want to go elsewhere. And, to make that move, I think they took their time and everything. And I think, Alan Green being a director, I think, they got in the room and they sat down, they interviewed a lot of guys. And I think Brian was the guy that fit what they wanted to do. And anytime you have an athletic director that comes in, this is his first big hire. Bruce Pearl was already here. Gus was already here. So this is his first big hire. And then he hired a new women's basketball coach. So, this is comes with the territory, man. I just think to get Brian Harsin away from Boise State, where he played college ball at, where he's coached at for many years, and then to pull him away from that area to Auburn, I thought was a big get because there's not many really solid coaches out there at that level. And, Brian is one of those young, solid coaches.
Yeah, I thought Harsin was a terrific hire, and I was really surprised he actually left, his alma mater and Boise State. And the only other person, in my opinion, that was, towards the top of the list was Bill Clark from UAB. I'm a big Marshall fan, so
Yeah.
Conference USA. I've
Mhm.
seen UABs pretty much come from nothing and then built their way up to the best team in their conference for years. I thought that would have been a really nice hire. I know it's a guy not too far away from Auburn. He's done a great job with UAB, and
Mhm.
speaking of Auburn, lots of Auburn fans kind of have mixed feelings about him. But what are your kind of thoughts on Auburn starting cornerback Bo Nix?
Well, for Bo, this is his third year, pretty much third offense. Even though Gus was there, they kind of kept a lot of things similar, even though they changed coordinators. But it's his third offense. It's kind of like a new start for him. With a new head coach and everything. So the biggest part for Bo was to buy into this new system and to buy and adjust and accept the changes. And I think he's done that so far. And I think they could have an opportunity for him to take a step forward this year. There's things that he can get better at. Stand in the pocket a little bit more and kind of knowing when that clock goes off in your head when to move, but not to move too early. So I think it's still a learning experience for him. It's still a learning. He's still learning the game because all his time since high school and then his first 2 years in college, everything has been in shotgun. Where this year he's going to do a lot more under the center, and so he'll be moved around a little bit more. He won't just be in the shotgun formation. So I think it gives him an opportunity to utilize his abilities a little bit better because you talk about with a strong run game that Auburn has with Tank Bisbee and Deshaun Showers, and I mean with Sean Showers, and now you talk about you can do play action off of that. When you're under the center, you're going for a handoff, and then you do play action off of it to the linebackers and the defensive line. It all looks the same. And now that gives Bo an opportunity to do what he does best is his athleticism of getting outside the pocket and making throws on the run instead of having to escape from the pocket when he's in gun and he gets caught with 15-yard losses sometimes. And so I think this help keeps the offense on schedule. I think it helps keeps him on schedule. And I think it gives him an opportunity to be more successful because people can't pinpoint his set points as far as like where he's going to be at within the pocket.
Yeah, you watch Bo Nix and you see, so much potential, but at the same time, like you mentioned, different coordinators, regardless, how good of a quarterback is, if you have different quarterback coaches or coordinators, a lot of them, that's going to, really mess up your playing style at times. And also, you look at Auburn's, offensive line, it's kind of tend to struggle at some of the past year or two. I feel like once they get a better offensive line, I feel like Nix has potential to be one of the better quarterbacks in the league and really show his full potential that we might not have seen yet.
Well, yeah, that's the main thing. Our offensive line last year it was kind of up and down. Guys in and out with injuries and different things. But I think this season, most of our offensive line are seniors, and so that's experience that you can't teach. And so I think that pays dividends. I think that gives Auburn an edge when you have a strong offensive line full of seniors, and then you have a strong run game behind your quarterback. It gives your quarterback an opportunity to have success. Now, the main thing about that is can the offensive line stay consistent? Can they continually to get better and better? And can they build that chemistry? Because it's not one guy, it's five guys got to be working together on all plays, and they have to be thinking alike. So, I think that's what it all comes down to is can they build that wall in front of Bo that gives him the opportunity to get from his first, second, into his third progressions, and can they come off the ball and get good push against the defensive lines that we face in the SEC to get open holes for Tank and Showers. So, there's room for growth, but anytime that you can put together five senior offensive linemen, and then you have Nick Brahms, who's one of the best, centers in all of college football. He's on one of the watch lists as a center. So, that's big for the quarterback because now he can point out all the different pass protections and the different mics and call out the different 5-0 calls when there's 5D linemen and telling everyone who's got who and making the right zone checks for the run game. So anytime you have a veteran center, man, it helps your offense and it helps your quarterback so much. And the thing I would say that's that Auburn, the biggest thing for us to see this year is what do we do with a young receiving core? There's talent there. You have Kobe Hudson, you have Elijah Cannon, you got Javarius Johnson, you got a kid named Malcolm, and then you got Demetrius Robertson that just came over from Georgia, the transfer from Georgia. He probably our oldest receiver besides Shedrick Jackson. So we have a young receiving core, not a lot of experience, but talented. And how fast can these guys come of age once the season starts?
Yeah, this upcoming season for Auburn is going to be very, very interesting, with a whole new coaching staff. And, last year it was just very difficult for, all the teams with coronavirus and everything. It was a very difficult year to play. So what would you say is your record prediction for the 2021 Auburn season?
Yeah, it's, like I said, it's kind of tough, to predict. It's kind of hard for me to predict that because I'm a radio analyst for Auburn. So, I can't give a set number. But I would say this, though, looking at this football team in the spring, they have beefed up more. I think we've gotten bigger. I think we've gotten stronger over the summer. And then when you think about what we've added, we get Deshaun Miller, Drayshawn Miller, the corner from West Virginia to transfer. That adds depth to our secondary. Well, you already have Smoke Monday. Then you have McCurry. That's a guy that's probably one of the elite corners in the SEC this year. And then, on the opposite side of him, you have Jalen Simpson and Drayshawn Miller competing for that second corner position. So I think that does a lot when you have depth at that position, especially in a pass-happy league. That does a lot defensively. Now you talk about linebackers, Owen Papo and McLean. I think two of the better linebackers in all SEC, probably the best tandem in the SEC right now. And not being biased, but I just think that's true. And then you look at our defensive line. I think we have, we can add a little bit more depth there. Of course, we're going from a 4-3 to a 3-4 defense, so add a little bit more depth there will help us out because you need pluggers, you need run stoppers, and then you need those guys on the edge that can rush the passer, and Derek Hall and Kobe Wooten and those guys that can get after the passer. So, I like this team. I do. I like this team. It's just about we play one of the toughest schedules in all of college football this year. But how fast can this team gel together? And I think the biggest thing is going to be that Penn State game. I think it's the third game of the season, and everything. So I just feel like that can be a game that can either spring us forward faster than we think, just because of the hostile environment that we'll be in.
Yeah, and that Penn State Auburn game, that's definitely going to be one of the biggest, non-conference games this season. And
Mhm.
it's always kind of hard to predict, teams, let's say like Auburn, LSU, Georgia, these SEC West teams, because they're just, their schedule is so difficult. If you get 8 wins in the SEC West, 9 wins, that's not bad at all considering, the type of top tier talent that you're playing, constantly, in your, division and non-conference, especially like you mentioned there with Penn State. And, obviously, you're an Auburn legend. And, when you started your NFL career, you actually started with the, Washington Redskins. And, they're no longer called, the Redskins. So what were your kind of initial thoughts on Washington retiring the name Redskins?
Ah, man, it was times will change, man. Like we live in an era where things are changing. They're changing faster than the normal, and you have to really have first of all have understanding of why it happened. So it's kind of bittersweet for me because that's the team that drafted me. And then one day you have children, you're gonna be able to tell your kids like, hey, that's the team your dad played for one day, but now that the name has changed, they're gonna be like, who? So, it's kind of like, and then plus, you think about Washington Redskins, they won 3 Super Bowls. They was, the Hogs back in the day, the pigskin, and you think about those glory days and everything, and all of a sudden it's almost like once you change the name, yes, the history is still there, but it's not behind the new name. Now the new name of Washington football team, now it kind of starts over where they're kind of creating their own history. And that's the hardest part is kind of removing those glory days of Joe Gibbs and, those guys winning those championships back in the day, and everything. But, so it was bittersweet. And then at the same time, you understand, okay, you don't want to offend any culture. You don't want to offend anybody. So, you have an understanding that things come and things change. So, it was a little bittersweet, but I understand.
Lots of people were kind of surprised, that the name change to the Washington football team. Lots of people weren't really, happy with basically a name just blunt and not really given a specific name.
Mhm.
What were your kind of thoughts on that current name they have?
Well, just go to show they're just not trying to rush the decision. I think they're still trying to figure out like, what is it that they really want to come to when they come to a conclusion. They want to make a solid decision. In the past, Washington has kind of hurt themselves by making, too quick decisions, whether it's getting rid of guys or whether it's, trying to sign big free agent just because of their names, but not necessarily do they fit the system or fit the scheme. And I think, with this new GM and everything that they have in, a new president of operations, I think they're on the right path of like handling things better. I really do. I think they take their time with handling decisions. I think they're trying to build a team from within and not so much on the outside. And I think that's where it starts at, man. If you can think about, how they went out and got Coach Rivera and everything. And this team is built off defense right now. And you understand that defense is what gets you to the playoffs and what wins championships. You got to be able to stop the opponent. And offensively, you got to be able to score and everything. In this day and age, points are at a high, they're at a premium. And so they go out and get Ryan Fitzpatrick, try to get a veteran quarterback in there with this strong defense and try to see if he can, help keep them on schedule. Not necessarily to win games on his own, but just try to keep the team on schedule. You try to prevent those huge turnovers. You try to prevent those setbacks that maybe a young quarterback tries to do, and then kind of get a veteran that knows how to take those chances and fit this offense. This offense is built to take shots down the field. I played in this offense, helped Josh Gordon break the record in this offense just because the ball goes down the field. You hit those deep in cuts, those deep comebacks, those deep go balls, but you got to be willing to take those chances. And I think Fitzpatrick, with his veteran leadership, I think gives them the opportunity for him to take those chances and those guys around him to believe that the ball will come to him.
Yeah, they were definitely one of the most surprised teams last season, and they had Fitzpatrick, which lots of people were high on him going to Washington. So do you maybe have a record prediction this year for Washington, maybe wins or losses, something like that?
Well, last year they finished 7-9, and let's face it, Dallas was down and out. They was down and out. They was, once they lost Dak, it's almost like the wheels came off. And then you think about New York, they lose Saquon Barkley, but New York found a way to beat Washington twice last year, and so that's something that they have to account for. And then you think about Philly, young quarterback, young head coach, trying to find their culture again. So you're not really sure what they're gonna have, and then you think about, just the overall division that they play in this year. It's not an easy schedule by no means, but at the same time, I think this team can win 9 or 10 games. It's a 17 game schedule now, so they could easily be 10-6 or better. Just because anytime you have a great defense, man, you got that Chase Young and Montez Sweat and those guys coming off the ball. You got a strong defensive line with Allen and Payne, and you have depth. And then you just pick up a kid, Jamin, up in from Kentucky, the linebacker. This kid is talented, man. Like he's a go-getter, and I think he fits what Ron Rivera wants to do. And I think that's why he went and got him. You saw what Thomas Davis did under Coach Rivera when he was with Carolina. So, I think this defense, man, is built. James Collins, they're able to move him. I mean, Collins, they're able to move Landon Collins, they're able to move him around a little bit. And then you think about the corners that they get in Fuller, and then my guy, the third. I'm trying to think what they call him the third, but they get him on the other side, from Cincinnati. And this is a guy that can cover. So you got to be able to cover receivers in this league. So that's why I see this team 10-6 or better.
Yeah, bringing in William Jackson from Cincinnati,
Yeah, that's the third. Yep. Mm-hmm.
and Jamin Davis, that linebacker from Kentucky. It's like last year their defense was phenomenal, and somehow throughout this offseason, their defense is now even better than it was last season. And I think it'll be very interesting to see what their record may be this season. It's going to be very interesting to see how they compete with Dallas for the NFC East. So, do you have any like suggestions or name ideas? What do you think maybe Washington's future name should be?
No, I really don't, man. I've thought of some, but it's something that you got to try to tie it into Washington, and when you think about it, it's kind of built of three cultures trying to come, 3 states or whatever, trying to come together. You have Virginia, then you got Maryland, then you got Washington D.C. Like, how do you tie in the whole Beltway? That whole 495 Beltway. How do you tie it all into one? And so that's why I think the name is so hard, because if you look at it, you already got the Washington Nationals. It fit them, and then you got the Capitals that fits them. and then the basketball team is the Wizards. So it's kind of like, where do you go? It's kind of like, so I wish I had one for you. I wish I had one for you. But if I came up with the right one, I said it, I would won't I won't sign off on it.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what their future name is, because there's just so much pressure on it. Like you were saying, you don't want to just rush and have some random name that doesn't make any sense. So
You
who knows?
heard of Red Wolves. Somebody said Red Wolves one time. You heard that. I'm trying to think of the other name that somebody threw out there. Uh, but it's kind of they don't want to rush this. So I understand. Like, get the right name, get the right nickname, and then you know it, and then move forward.
So you were able to play with Washington, playing against Dallas, in the NFC East, one of the biggest rivalries in the NFL. With Auburn, you got to play in the Iron Bowl against
Yeah.
Alabama, some of the biggest rivalries in football. So which rivalry of those two would you say is bigger?
Man, I tell you what, I got a chance to. That's the special thing about my career. I got a chance to play in some really, really good games, like the Auburn Alabama game, the Iron Bowl. Man, I tell everybody, if you have it on your bucket list and it's something that you want to experience, like it's nothing like it. Go to the Iron Bowl. It's a tremendous experience, and you just never know what kind of game you're going to get. Throw the records out the window, doesn't matter. When I played for Washington, getting ready for the Cowboys game. That is one of the biggest rivalries in, like you said, in all the NFL. And, it goes all the way back to the long, long days ago. And when you think about gearing up for that game, you could become a legend for at least a whole week, depending on how you play in that game. And it's always, beat Dallas, and everything, especially twice a year when you play them. So, outside of that, man, I got a chance to play in another huge rivalry. I know you're not a Raiders fan, probably, but I played for the Raiders. Had a great career there, and got a chance to play in the Chiefs and Raiders and Chargers and Raiders matchup. And I tell you, man, like it is some wild stuff. Like you see people fighting in the stands, you see people going at each other, and so that Raiders Chiefs and that Raiders Chargers, it's a whole another big rivalry as well.
Yeah, those are definitely some of the biggest rivalries, in football. You mentioned, Raiders fans. I used to have Bengals season tickets. I
Mhm.
remember when the Bengals had a home game against the Raiders. I believe that was Carson Palmer's first game back from Cincinnati. There was a fight in the stands, and it was just absolutely crazy. Kind of, with Oakland and Palmer. You mentioned you had a great career with Oakland, and things were going great in the 2011 season. And unfortunately, got injured, and they ended up trading for Carson Palmer. Did you have any idea that trade was happening or anything like that?
No, it actually happened while I was in surgery, man. I was getting screws put in my shoulder at that time. I remember coming out of surgery and found out, that they had traded for Carson. And, it's kind of tough. It was bittersweet, man, because I was upset because I felt like I got to the Raiders. The Raiders wasn't winning. And then they was rebuilding the culture. In my first year I'm there, I started 12 games. We go 8-4. The next year, we starting off, we were 5-2 the first 7 games. The Raiders hadn't been 5-2 in probably 10, 11 years, and you're helping the franchise, and we have a really young football team, man. I feel like we were ready to just take off, and all of a sudden, you come out of their surgery and you find out that, they traded Carson Palmer. It's like somebody took a knife and stuck in your gut, just because the simple fact that it was my contract year as well, and I was doing everything you asked of a quarterback when you trade for a guy to come in. We was winning. And the first year we go 7-0 in the division. They hadn't beaten the Chargers in I don't know how long, and we beat them twice that year, and the Chiefs twice that year, and the Broncos and everything. So it was just tough, man, to swallow that pill because I feel like I was gonna stay there for at least 5 to 7 years and have a chance to maybe finish my career out there. And it really threw the shade in the things of knowing like this NFL thing is a true business, and everything, man. But life moves on, and still to this day, I think about it at times, what could have been, and but at the same time, I can't move forward, looking in the back, looking backwards.
Yeah, I mean, you played great there, with Oakland. Did not really make any sense. And it's like they traded a first and a second round pick for Palmer, so they clearly,
Mhm.
really high on him. And it's interesting because, for instance, you look at the Bears when they traded up to get Justin Fields, they informed
Mhm.
to Andy Dalton that they were going to take Justin Fields, even though at that
Mhm.
time Dalton has yet to take a snap for Chicago.
Right.
And then we look at that whole Aaron Rodgers situation, taking Love, and he had no idea. It's crazy
Mhm.
because you hear people say like it's a business, but when there's situations like that, it's just really crazy like how much can change in a blink of an eye type of situation.
Yeah, that's why you can't get mad at these guys when they holding out for their contracts, because they don't ever know when they're going to be traded, or you know when this team decides, hey, we want to move on from you, and so these guys have futures. They have to set their families up, for long term success. But at the end of the day, man, you're a competitor. You want to win, and for me, like I'm all about winning. And at that time, I'm winning, and that was coming off a lockout year where Richard Seymour and myself, we was holding on our own. We was holding workouts for our team, and putting together plays and things, and going against each other and everything. So we did those things, and it seemed like they soon forgot. And they just shoved you out the window, and all of a sudden, just bringing a whole nother guy. And I really think they messed the Raiders football team up because it kind of split the locker room a little bit, and it could have been a situation where had they been patient, maybe I could have came back by the end of the year, or maybe, we end up finishing that year out, but then the next season we come back with all our guys and all our weapons, and then we use that first and second round draft pick on some solid picks. And while we continue to keep building, and we was becoming the team to beat in that division. And that's the thing, we was turning the curve, but hindsight 2020. But it just goes to show people, man, like you can't rush things, you can't be impatient because sometimes it can set you back.
Yeah, and it's just crazy, how that whole situation, happened and everything. And really looking back, on that trade, honestly, being a Bengals fan, I was just absolutely shocked that Palmer actually was traded, and the fact that he was traded for a first and second round pick. Honestly, he was not with Oakland a long time after that trade happened. Realistic, in my opinion, I really think it's one of the worst trades in NFL history because it's one thing to maybe trade for a guy, but the fact that you traded so much for him, and at that time, he's clearly not that passionate to play because he
Mhm.
was holding out at Cincinnati. It's just that was just really really shocking to me how that everything happened like that.
Yeah, I know what I'm saying. He was home for 7 weeks. Like it wasn't like he wasn't on the football team. He was with Cincinnati, and he had a contract making good money, but he decided he didn't want to be there, and everything. That what blew me away. That here's someone busting their tail trying to give this team everything, and nothing against Carson, but he didn't want to play for Cincinnati. You know what I'm saying? But then you basically trade and take the job and give it to him. And then you kind of just say, hey, I'm a free agent at the end of the year. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of jobs open. And that was just, I'm one of the few quarterbacks I've seen lose their starting job when they're playing really good and helping the franchise and not get that opportunity again.
Yeah, it's a really unfortunate situation, and a couple of years after that 2011, in 2013, you kind of mentioned earlier playing with Josh Gordon, you were actually able to play for the Cleveland Browns. And, during that time, the Browns were basically the laughing stock in the NFL. They had
Mhm.
some decent players, but how difficult was it kind of playing for arguably the worst team in the league in the Cleveland Browns?
It was tough because the fan base is awesome, man. The fan base, the dog pound is like top notch, and it was tough, man, because the team was so young, and I knew they brought me in there to kind of help mentor Wheaton and everything, and I remember Wheaton trying to help him. They said it was a quarterback battle in the beginning of the season, but it really wasn't a quarterback battle. They had already given him the job, through the summer, and I was just there to, kind of help mentor him, and it just kind of gave it a story. But ended up having a really good preseason that year, and then he ended up playing, and then he got hurt. It's supposed to be my turn to go in, but instead, they started Hoyer, and the coach came to me and said, "Hey, we want to see what we have in this young guy in Hoyer." and everything before we give you a shot. So that kind of set me back. I'm just like, that's so dysfunctional. I was just like, he didn't beat me out to get the job, but then you give him the job to start over me when it's my time to play. And of course, I'm in my ninth year, where now your ninth year shows you still throwing the football around. So that kind of took a lot out of me. And then all of a sudden, Hoyer plays, and he gets hurt, and then it goes back to Wheaton, and then Wheaton plays, and all of a sudden we get to the thick of our schedule, and they say, "Hey, Jay, we want you to go in now." So it's kind of like they set you up almost, you know what I'm saying? But then at the same time, I'm a competitor. I go out and compete. So we go to Kansas City that year, and Kansas City is undefeated, and we go there and we have them on the ropes to win the game at the end, and everything. And unfortunately, we came up short. But then the next week, we beat Baltimore. They hadn't beat Baltimore like 17 tries, and then we beat Baltimore at home, and I had one of the biggest games. And then that game, I actually felt like I cracked one of my ribs. Loader fell on me, I ended up finishing the game. But we come back, off a bye week. I already played Cincinnati. I still, my ribs were hurting like crazy. I ended up, having to get shot up in my ribs to try to go out and play in that game. And there are some things I wish I could have back, but it's hard when you're playing with a numb rib on your throwing side and you're trying to play through it. And this is stuff that people don't know. The injuries you trying to play through just to help a team win. And then the next week I'm playing against Pittsburgh, starting the game off pretty strong, get a concussion, out for that game, and then miss the Jacksonville game. And then we go to New England, and I throw for almost 400 yards, and we're up by 12 points with like a minute and 56 seconds left. And you tell me, how do you lose that game? And it's almost like, and we find a way to lose that game. And that's just like, geez, you can't catch a break. And, so we ended up playing tough that year. But we had a really good young football team, man, that just didn't know how to win yet. And I really feel like had they kept Chud and had to give me an opportunity to come back and then, just kind of help a young guy that maybe they drafted or something, but keep our defense intact. I really think we'd have had a really good year in 2014. Because I just feel like this team, we was in every ball game. We just didn't know how to win. We didn't know how to finish. And that takes time and everything. But like I said, once again, people are impatient. They want answers right then and there and everything. So it's just that's just the way of the game, man. And at that time, like you said, it was tough because the franchise was kind of all over the place.
And you mentioned, being up 12 points under 2 minutes left, and blowing a lead. Around here, that's basically bungled because, the Bengals are used to, blowing leads and stuff like that too. But it really is crazy. Like,
Uh,
I mean, the Browns, they have a terrific roster now. But like
mhm.
5, 6 years ago, they were easily the most dysfunctional team in the NFL.
Right,
It's like they did not give their quarterbacks enough chances. You look at how many
right,
quarterbacks they've started throughout the years. They've this guy doesn't play good. We'll start a new guy, and it's really
right.
crazy how dysfunctional they were.
Yeah, you can't do that. Like this is not a video game. You don't just plug people in and say, "Oh, go out there and do this." Why do you think it takes time? Why you think LeBron has to go get people to come in and help to win championships? Like it takes a whole group of everybody working together. But for so many years, the Browns would just let everything fall off on the quarterbacks. I'm just like, how can you blame quarterbacks that was really good coming out of college? But every quarterback either you get in free agency or every quarterback you draft, you can't tell me that every quarterback is not good enough to be a starter long term. It's because they so impatient. They kept changing so many times, and then they kept putting everything on the quarterback instead of trying to build a whole team and everything. But now you see they changed GMs, they changed, VP of operations, and what do you see? You see a difference. What they done, they built within the draft. They went out, they gotten solid players. They gotten solid defensive players in the free agency. They have a strong run game. They have a two-back tandem. Like they have players. They giving Baker Mayfield help. And you think about last year, the first half of the season, everybody was talking about kicking Baker Mayfield out of town. And then all of a sudden, the last half of the season, he's with his first year coach, and all of a sudden things start to take off for him. And his touchdown to ratio the second half of the season was outstanding. And then they caught fire, they caught confidence, and now they find themselves in the playoffs and a couple of plays away from being in the AFC Championship game. So, it's just things like that, man. That if it wasn't for like I said, saying last talked about Washington, Washington used to do the same stuff, but now you look at it, they've got different people running the organizations. The owners have kind of taken seats back, and you let these VPs, you let these GMs, and you let these guys operate and do their job. And now you're seeing a different style football teams. You're seeing them competing better because they're building the whole team. You don't have to have a superstar quarterback to win the Super Bowl or to go to the playoffs. Like it just doesn't happen. So if I can name you a whole bunch of superstar quarterbacks that started throughout the league for a long time and not have any Super Bowls. So you think about it, Russell Wilson, he won Super Bowls, but look what was all around him when he won those Super Bowls. You got Marshawn, you got that secondary is considered one of the best secondaries in all of NFL history. That defense, and then yeah, you just think about those things. Like, so it's not that when you look at Tom Brady, was Tom Brady a flashy quarterback last year? No, he wasn't a flashy quarterback last year. I was just like, he made throws and made plays, but let's face it, let's be honest. That Super Bowl, that defense did an outstanding job. You had one of the highest scoring offenses to 9 points. Like, that's kudos. It wasn't just Brady. It was a whole team. And that's why I say, man, like it takes a whole football team to win championships. And I think too much is put on the quarterback position to go out and win championships. And I think that's where teams falter at because they need this flashy name back there, the selling tickets or whatever. No, you're gonna sell tickets when you start winning games and everything. So, I think the league is kind of changing in that aspect because you look at Josh Allen in Buffalo. People was giving him crap for the first year and a half, 2 years. And then all of a sudden last year, you look, the kid was outstanding. He go to the AC championship game, and now he's just signed a big contract. Dak wasn't a flashy quarterback. He's not like a flashy guy. So Dak he's solid though. Guys feed off of him. He's a leader and everything. So I think it's all about man who can rally their team to play at a high level, and that's what it's all about.
It's like you can have the best quarterback in the world, but if you don't have talent around him, it's not really going to get you anywhere. Look at Rodgers. I mean, he's not been to a Super Bowl in over a decade. He's one of the best quarterbacks of all time. He has Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, but you need more than just two really good players. And it's really crazy. You look at some of these players, like you mentioned Russell Wilson. He was in the Super Bowl back-to-back years, has been since because he's not had nearly as much talent as he did back then.
All right.
And speaking of like talent, and, players who are really, really talented, there's some players who may not get recognition compared to others. So, kind of during your NFL career, who are some players you had the chance to play with who you thought were really underrated and never really received the credit that they deserved?
Yeah, man, I think honestly, like, let's talk about Darren McFadden. Darren McFadden, one of the guys I played with in Oakland. This guy was a workhorse. And unfortunately, injuries kind of got the best of him. But when this guy was healthy, he's one of the better running backs in the league. For real. I got a chance to play with London Fletcher, man. London Fletcher in Washington. Like London is not just a great player, but a great person. I think London deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. This guy, man, if you think about his size, but his durability, to play so many games at the linebacker position and not miss games, and one of the most physical positions, and to be able to, he played with the Rams and won a Super Bowl. He played in Buffalo and he played in Washington, man. So he's definitely one of those guys, man. That name should definitely be up there to be considered as a Hall of Famer. And Richard Seymour, Richard Seymour played for New England. Richard was with me in Oakland. And he's yet to get in the Hall of Fame, but he's another deserving guy to get in the Hall of Fame. And so he's one of those guys. I think those two guys definitely, man. I think really need to make their way into the Hall of Fame. Solid guys, great competitors, and everything, man. And I think it'll happen for him.
Yeah, I mean, you look at McFadden, he was great. It was just unfortunate, with his injuries and everything. Then you look at Seymour, he was great. And I really believe if Fletcher played his whole career with the Cowboys, the Steelers, not only would he be in the Hall of Fame already, he would be a first ballot Hall of Famer. It's crazy. Like, you look at the Cowboys and the Steelers, how many Hall of Famers they have compared, to not so big teams like the Bengals, the Lions, teams like that. I really believe, Fletcher played in maybe a more top market team, definitely would have got more recognition and would probably be, in the Hall of Fame right now. And,
Mhm.
playing kind of mentioned, with Washington and Dallas, there had to be, so many, trash talking, games and everything like that. So who would you say players you played against was the biggest trash talker you played against in the NFL?
Oh man, trash talking. Most guys were respectful when they played me, man. Like I got, like for whatever reason, I played against Baltimore and Ed Reed on defense, and Ray Lewison was solid, man. They always had respect. Even like the Steelers and even some of the Cowboys, most of those guys had respect. Yeah, I would probably say if you have to say, you know, Ike Taylor, he likes to talk noise, but he didn't talk a lot to me, but I know he would talk noise to some of the guys on the defense, but some guys get in chirping matches, man, but I think it's like in all fun and games, you know what I'm saying? But when the game's on the line, like we getting at each other, we shake hands and talk after the game, but during the game, man, like I didn't get in a whole bunch of chirping matches because I was always on to the next play, on to the next play, and everything. And Phillip Rivers did it a little different. He talked a lot of trash a little bit to a lot of guys, but it was all out of respect though, man. So I just think the game, man, is just the more you can stay away from fighting, but competing against each other at a high level. Like I'm from the old school. Once we step on the football field, we're not friends till the game's over. There's no time to be shaking hands and dapping each other up during the game. No, I'm trying to beat you. You trying to beat me. We trying to win. Now, when the game's over with, how you doing, bro? What's up? How's the family? How's the everything else? Now we're moving on. But in between those lines for 60 minutes, man, it's all about I'm getting after you, and I'm trying to do the best I can to beat you, and everything else is secondary. So hopefully the game gets back to that, man. Hopefully it gets back to that. This year was fun watching the NBA playoffs. Man, you saw a whole bunch of guys like going at each other, teams that hadn't been there in a long time, the Hawks, the Bucks, just Phoenix, what I'm saying? Like that was fun to watch. It's fun to watch. And the Knicks, think about it, teams are better when more teams are good. I think the NFL we got to get to that point where Cleveland made the NFL better last year because they were good. You need those teams to be good. You need the Bears. You need all these teams. Buffalo being back in the playoffs like that, it makes the NFL better. You know, Oakland can get back to winning, get back to the playoffs. It makes the NFL better. And so it's just, man, you want to see great teams. You don't want to see five great teams and 20 average teams. You know what I'm saying? You want to see 20 really good teams. There's going to be some teams up and down each year, but you want to see 20 teams that that's solid. It makes it great for the NFL, makes it great for basketball, makes it great for baseball and all sports, man. So, hopefully, things start trending in that direction.
And it really is great when teams who were not good, are good. It makes the sport so much more intriguing. It's not just these 3 or 4 teams are going to be in it. I mean, the Bills and the Browns both won a playoff game last season for the first time in over 20
Right.
years. So it makes it so much more interesting. Somebody who may not know a ton about sports, for the most part, let's say they don't really know much about the Browns, but they know they're bad. All of a sudden, they're really good. It really makes the sport better, like you mentioned. And during your time in the NFL, like I said, you've been able to play for 5 different teams. There was so many great athletes and coaches you were able to be coached by and play for. But if there was one individual athlete or coach, who would you say as one athlete or coach you learned the most throughout your NFL career?
That's a good one. I would probably say like a coach that really, from a quarterback coach standpoint, um, I learned a lot with Al Saunders, and I know a lot of people give Hugh Jackson flack because of what happened in Cleveland, but when he was in Oakland, he did a really good job from an offensive standpoint. Now, when he was preparing for games offensively, like it was hard for people to stop us. Like if you look at the numbers that we put up from an offensive standpoint under his tutelage, we racked up on people, and I think. a lot of that too is he had talent. He had guys that fit his scheme. But Al Saunders, I thought he was one of the guys that did a good job. Quarterback coach now that's up in Washington. Zampese. Coach Zampese was in Cincinnati. He's a really good quarterback coach. He's one of the guys that knows a whole bunch of S's and O's, can pick up different pass protections, can, get you solidified on where to go with the ball and different things. So, he's a really solid quarterback coach. And I enjoy playing for Norv Turner. I think Norv Turner has a really good scheme, even though he's retired and now his son is Scott Turner, is now his offense coordinator in Washington. But I feel like Norv, man, I can see why Dallas won so many championships when he was offensive coordinator. If you got the weapons that fit Norv's system, like I can see why Phillip Rivers had so much success. LaDainian Tomlinson had so much success in his offense because, he's another guy, man, that can dial up the right plays at the right time. And he can help your quarterback. He can help you. And I wish I'd had a chance to play for him more of the years than just one, and more than just half a season. 'Cause this guy, man, he can dial them up. So, I've had some good quarterbacks, man, and everything. But in college, I say Al Borges. Al Borges is, this guy, man. He came to Auburn and everything, and he didn't try to retweak everything. He just said, "We just gonna do what you do best." And everything. And that's what he did. And we ended up having an undefeated season, won 15 games in a row. They met the 2 games of junior year to end the year, and 13 senior year. And so I've had the fortune enough to play for some really good coaches. And then I played for some coaches that was kind of inexperienced and not by fault. In Washington, I played with Joe Gibbs, one of the Hall of Fame coaches. And but then Joe Gibbs retired, my second year, but really my first full year as a starter. And he retired at the end of the year. That's when, Sean Taylor, we lost Sean Taylor, and I think that was just a lot of stress. And then his son was sick, and I think, so he retired from football. And then that's when we hired Jim Zorn. Jim Zorn, a solid quarterback coach, but he hasn't ever had experience at being an offensive coordinator or being a head coach. And we moved him to offensive coordinator and head coach all at one time before we even hired anybody else, before we even hired a head coach. So that kind of showed you kind of like a lot of the dysfunction that had gone on in Washington at that time and everything. So, it's just tough, man. I've seen a lot of highs and lows. I know why certain teams win, how certain teams lose, and everything, man. But it's just I'm fortunate for what I went through, what I've seen is molded me to who I am as a person, as a man. I'm able to help younger kids. I'm able to help older guys, that's in the league, or guys that's trying to become certain coaches or whatever, or players, and how to react and how to treat certain people, and how to understand the process. Everyone wants instant results, but I tell them it's not. You can't pop it in the microwave and all of a sudden it instantly happens. You have to work your butt off at it, and you have to build, and that's where it starts at.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And you mentioned Norv Turner. He was phenomenal with San Diego and Dallas. And you also mentioned, Hugh Jackson. I actually had him on my show one time. I'm a huge fan of him, especially. I mean, he made Andy Dalton look like an MVP candidate in
Yeah.
2015. This was the best team we had in years.
Mhm.
And something else, you were coached by Hugh Jackson during your time with Oakland. And your last NFL season, you played for the Bengals when Hugh Jackson was with Cincinnati.
Yeah.
What the Hugh Jackson connection, did that have anything involved with you going to Cincinnati for your final year?
Yeah, it did. He called me and he asked me would I still play for him. Of course there was kind of some bitterness between us after he made the trade for Carson during my Oakland time and everything. And so he was able to kind of mend things, and I had a chance to go to Cincinnati. He wanted me to help Andy out. So I got a chance to, help mentor Andy a little bit. Andy's a good quarterback, but I got a chance to help him a little bit more, or kind of just, letting some stuff off his shoulders, and kind of help him teach him Hugh Jackson's offense and everything. So, that was a good experience. After 10 years, man, they offered me to come back. I had the opportunity to go to Baltimore as well. Dallas had called me. I had the opportunity to go to Dallas, but I was just kind of tired at that time. I was tired of going through so many different changes. I would just feel like there's something different, more for me to go do, outside of football. And my love for the game was still there, but if I couldn't give it 100%, man, if I couldn't be honest and everything, then I didn't want to be out there. So, I turned down the game and everything and found other things that I enjoy doing in life and as well. And at that time, but yeah, I could have played probably another 4 years in the NFL. But at that time, man, I had lost a little. I would still have love for the game, but I had lost a little bit because I went through a lot of different things than a lot of other quarterbacks, and everything that kind of took that fun away. And once you lose that fun, it's just you can't go out there and play at that level and sugarcoat it.
And your last year was with the Bengals, and you retired in June 2015. And the first time you were on my show, you mentioned a really interesting thing I did not know about. And the Bengals tried to convince you to come out of retirement. Can you kind of talk about how all that situation came about and everything?
Yeah, they tried to talk me out. Andy Dalton got hurt during that year, the 15 season. He ended up getting hurt, and AJ McCarron was the other quarterback that was on the roster, and AJ was there when I was there. And so, they called me because I've already had a connection with AJ. I already knew the system. And they was just like, hey, you come in, we can give you a week, 2 weeks to get ready and, get yourself back in playing shape and everything. And, we'll start off with AJ and to see how everything goes from there, and then, see if we need to put you in or not. But and basically they wanted some depth at the position because all they had at that point was AJ left. And at that time, but I was like, Coach, I've been sitting out of football now for months. I'm gonna be honest with you. I hadn't picked up a football, I hadn't touched a football. And I was just like, you talking about 2 weeks? Like it takes you more than 2 weeks to get ready for football. You gotta, lift and get, and all those different things. But yeah, I told him, I said, I can't do that to myself. I was just like, I have too much, pride and honor of what I put out on the football field. I got to be able to live with that.
That's a very, very, interesting story about, them trying to convince you to come out of retirement. And, since you've been retired, what are some things you've kind of been up to since your playing days over?
Well, now I'm in radio and TV. I do radio for Auburn, home games. I'll be doing CBS Monday quarterback club football this year up in New York, maybe 7 to 8 times this year. I work with NBC Washington off and on for the Washington football on NBC, talking about Washington football team. Also, I have a podcast and Believe in Everything Auburn, BLEAV. Believe in Everything Auburn. Everybody, subscribe for free. Tune in. My co-host is Taylor Beth Davis. She works with the Carolina Panthers. She worked with the Kansas City Royals. She works with ESPN on Saturdays covering college football. So we do a really good show. Just interviewed Coach Harsin today. So that's something if everybody want to hear what Coach Harsin had to talk about with me and her, make sure you tune into that show. I'm going to put it up either later tonight or tomorrow. Make sure you go in there and tune it in, man. Subscribe for free. Follow us. Give us the opportunity to continue to grow. We have great guests that come on our show, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean that's really, really cool. You're believing Auburn, everything, your podcast. So can you kind of tell some of the listeners we can follow that podcast and you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, jcampbell17. I have a blue check mark, so it's me. Then also, so I put a lot of my podcast shows on there. You can scroll down and you'll see a couple of them. So I'll give you a preview, and then you just go into I usually put a link on there. You go and click on that link, hit follow, and then start to tune into our show. And each time we do an episode, you'll get it'll refresh up a link for you. Also, you can follow me on Twitter, capital JC, lowercase AM, lowercase AM _17, JCam _17. I'm on Twitter as well. And like I said, man, just continue to follow me, continue to support what I'm doing in the radio world and TV world. And hopefully this fall you'll see me on TV a couple of times on CBS stuff on Monday nights up in New York.
Yeah, that'll be really, really cool. I'll make sure to put the links in the description below. Once again, thank you so much for joining. It's really, really cool, having one of my favorite childhood players on the show. And make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you all next time on Sports 2 Hunt Show.
Appreciate it.